One of the famous female politicians of the 20th century, Indira Gandhi still evokes complex feelings. Firm in politics and helpless in family matters. Progressive and aggressive. In January 1966, India's Prime Minister, Lal Bahadur Shastri, passed away and the race for his seat was on. Among the candidates for the post was the daughter of the famous Indian independence fighter Jawaharlal Nehru. Women have already ruled parts of India. For example, in the early 20th century, Princess Shah Jahan ruled Bhopal, and at the time of the Turkic conquests, the Delhi Sultanate was led by a girl named Razia, at the behest of her late father. But a woman leader of India, is such a thing even possible? On the day of the parliamentary vote, an MP asked a colleague who was counting votes for candidates and was supposed to announce the results, "Boy or girl?" "A girl," exclaimed the colleague with a smile. Never in patriarchal India was such a cheer for such an announcement. True, it would be a lie to claim that literally the whole country rejoiced, and yet the late Nehru was loved and respected by many, and his daughter Indira was seen as an extension of him. The girl was 49 years old at the time. Jawaharlal Nehru and his wife Kamala were well known in the ranks of those fighting for India's independence from Britain. In part because of their great cause, after the birth of a baby girl, the Nehrus did not try to have other children for a long time. Their house was constantly packed with other fighters. Mahatma Gandhi, who would later become the first leader of Free India, Indira saw for the first time in her 2 years. It is clear that Indira herself was involved in the struggle for India from a young age. When adults were burning English goods to use only Indian goods, the girl, who was not asked to sacrifice, realizing that she was just a child, threw her wonderful big English doll into the fire, and after that day and for the rest of her life she wore only saris as a matter of principle. Neither in dress, nor in dainties, nor in household items, she never gave herself any indulgence in anything all her life. The fire where Indira's doll was burnt is said to have forged her heart of iron. Her mother initially confined herself to educational talks, but after a huge number of the movement's men were imprisoned, the women decided it was time to become more active. Kamala led the women of Allahabad, the city where Nehru lived. Her leadership was unanimously recognized and the protests were massive and effective. Factory workers, beggars, and students, wealthy housewives, actresses took to the streets despite government prohibitions. After the women of Allahabad decided not to enter English shops anymore and to seek only Indian-made goods, British business in the city rapidly collapsed. For nearly a year, Kamala organized rallies in the city until she was arrested and imprisoned. A political prisoner in a sari was something new for India. Prison undermined Kamala's health, and she died 5 years later while undergoing treatment in Switzerland. To bury her, 19-year-old Indira had to give up her studies at the university that had just been established by the poet Rabindranath Tagore. Along with her mother's life, her childhood was irrevocably gone. She felt it keenly. It was time for the girl to become a woman. Indira stayed in Europe for 2 years to study at an English college. She was interested in history, anthropology and management. With the outbreak of the Second World War, Indira rushed back to her homeland. Getting to India was now only possible through South Africa. There, in Cape Town, there was a large Indian community there. In front of the community, Indira made her first political speech. Yes, India was above all else, but that did not mean a girl had to cling to stale traditions, especially the custom of female silence. Indira was going to build a new and prosperous India, an India that would usher in a golden age rather than looking to the past. Indira broke another tradition when, 2 years after her return, she married Feroz Gandhi, not a relative of Mahatma, a Parsi Zoroastrian. Such a marriage was thought impossible for a girl from the Brahmin caste to which Indira belonged. But for those who are building a new India, it cannot be impossible. They were arrested almost immediately and released only after a year. Indira gave birth to 2 boys, Rajiv and Sanjay, one after the other, but did not intend to remain only a mother. When India achieved independence in 1947 and formed a national government, Indira asked to be secretary to her father, India's first prime minister. She travelled with him around the country and abroad, unusual behaviour for a married Indian woman. Gradually, she held various positions in the Indian National Congress. After Feroz's death, 40-year-old Indira became a member of the Inks Working Committee and began traveling to the hotbeds of national conflict. If her character had not been steely before, it had hardened in the constant danger. But, it must be said, she did not make much use of her experience in dealing with national conflicts later, when she became Prime Minister. If before she had to persuade, now she preferred to rely on weapons. When Indira became the head of India, she broke another frontier. But some borders she wanted to keep, the old Indian ones. So the country was dragged into the Indo-Pakistani wars. The Pakistanis wanted independence, India liked to have independence alone and not give it to the others. This scenario was repeated with the Tamils of Sri Lanka, the Sikhs and the Muslims of northern India. It could think of no better way to fight poverty than forced sterilization in parallel. However, it managed to bring about the Green Revolution. Despite its name, this was not a revolution in the direction of humanism towards the Greens, but a leap in agricultural development that made India completely independent of imported food supplies. Indira ruled with an iron hand, but she could not rule her family. Her son Rajiv, against his mother's wishes, married a foreigner, an Italian woman, Sonia Mino. Another son, Sanjay, was constantly in the center of political and not only scandals, did what he wanted, and his mother could not tame him with the motherly word, and as a ruler of the country she did not want to or did not dare to tame him. He died under mysterious circumstances, in a very suspicious car accident, in the 80th year. Perhaps someone dared to tame him instead of his indecisive mother. After the bloody suppression of the equally bloody Sikh mutiny, she continued to defiantly keep Sikh bodyguards around her, believing that the mutineers were one thing and the community was another. But the community was not very agreeable. Indira was shot dead by one of the bodyguards. All of India saw her off in tears. All except the Sikhs, the Tamils, the Muslims, all except the forcibly sterilized women and the men who lost their businesses because of Indira's reforms. All except those who had not forgiven her for breaking caste laws, and her sons breaking caste laws. All except those who hated her for condoning Sanjay. But even those who stayed were very, very many. Because there are very, very many people in India, and by the way, purely on the theory of probability, there is a little new Indira Gandhi growing up now among this multitude. It will be interesting to see her.